platforms later on. The reason I'm doing it live is so that people can write in questions that are relevant to the subject that we're talking about. So what we're talking about this morning is healing in 2026. And healing in 2026, as I just mentioned in the past video, which we've attempted a couple of times, is that it's more difficult than ever before, and it's also easier than ever before. One, because for the same reason, we have access to so much information, and that information can either paralyze us and confuse us and stop us from actually being able to heal, or it can help us to educate, but we actually don't ever do the deeper work. And there's also so much conflicting information out there that becomes really confusing to people. And what I often say to my clients is that everything is relevant, everything is helpful, every single modality has its place, every tool has its place, everything works essentially. Not everything. Obviously, there's some people out there selling some pretty whack shit, but everything that we're sort of seeing coming through mainstream is working to a degree. So we've got different things or different elements that different modalities are working on. So what healing has sort of started to look like in 2026 or across the last, especially the last 2 years, maybe the last 5, is that people are starting to quickly realize that, the CBT or the mindfulness or, the mindset hacks or even things like EMDR, there's things that are helping them, but they still feel like there's something missing. And this is something that I'm having so many conversations about. It's something that I have personally experienced, and it's something that I've been really passionate about for the last 8 or so years, because I've noticed that so many people seem to be touching on just one part of the healing situation. So healing to me in 2026, it needs to start becoming, for therapists who are listening to this, but also for people who are looking for help, healing needs to happen at a number of different levels. And this is not new. Like everybody knows the saying mind, body, soul. Everything needs to come across mind, body, and soul. But the thing is that a lot of people don't understand is how interconnected and how separate these things are. So again, a bit of a paradox there in that mind, body, and soul are so connected in that, the beliefs that you have, the subconscious beliefs that you have, the memories that you have, the things that are the pathways in your brain, that is all energetic. So, some people talk about soul and quantum level and consciousness as the same thing. There is a connection there between mind and soul. There is a connection there between mind and quantum. And so when we're working with the mind, we are working unconsciously with the quantum. And when we're working with the body, we're working with the quantum, because all of our cells are made up of energy. And so we're always working across these different levels. And there's healing that happens to our soul when we work on our human and when we work on, the experiences that we're having in this life, whether it be ours or generational. There is healing that happens to our soul. So they cross over, but they don't cross over enough that we can, I guess, just work on one element of it. So what I mean when I say that is that I know this from experience for myself and other clients, is that I have working with other clients, is that I can visually process a memory, a traumatic memory, and I can, and I can know that memory was then and this is now and I'm in the present, but I can still have a level of, subconscious beliefs about myself and my identity, but also pathways in the brain that are used to functioning in a certain way. And I can have a body that is still incredibly dysregulated from that experience, that's constantly pulling me back into an anxious state if I'm only visually processing the memory. So we have to be, this is why I've talked about and created the 4 pillars of healing. I think in 2026, people are starting to realize, and healing starts to look like people are piecing this together themselves. They're going to a somatic therapist to move their body, to release the trauma from their body, and to express their emotions. If this somatic therapist is working with an emotional release, they're moving their body, they're speaking, they're saying words, they're releasing emotions, but they're understanding that that's not processing a memory, and they still have all these negative limiting beliefs about who they are and how the world works and who they have to be in the world, and they're still reacting to their partner. They're still pulling away. They're still doing all of the same patterns because the somatic release isn't enough. So then they're going to a hypnotherapist or an NLP practitioner, or they're doing some sort of work with their mind, or they're processing at a neural level, and at a mind level they might be doing some mindset work. And then they realize that that's kind of not enough either, because they're still having these visual memories or these flashbacks. And so they're going to another practitioner, maybe EMDR, where they're actually, or brain spotting, or, they're going to another modality where they're actually able to visually process those memories. For me, this is the gap in people's healing right now, is that they're working with 3, 4, 5 practitioners either at once or one after the other, when there actually is a way to blend all of these different pillars of healing and these different understandings of healing into one method. And this is what Aruka therapy is. So for me, I'm just going to check. So for me, healing in 2026, I talked about new techniques and ancient wisdom. Nothing is new. Everything is recycled. Everything is, rediscovered. There's a lot out there online at the moment around, nervous system resets. There's some modalities that I have seen that are nervous system resets that claim to activate the pineal gland and activate the nervous system, and instantaneously completely reset the entire nervous system. And there's a lot of videos online of people shaking and rolling their eyes and having these quantum experiences. What I'm finding in 2026 is that people are just as susceptible to wanting this quick fix, to wanting to believe that there is something that can just entirely reset their nervous system and boom, they're on their way. But there is a divide as well in people that are becoming a bit more skeptical and a bit more understanding of the fact that healing is a process, and that there are a number of things that need to be, I guess, ticked off in order for you to actually completely heal from something. And when I say completely heal, this is another subject that is kind of really been misconstrued, because there are a lot of people that say you shouldn't say that you're healed. You shouldn't say that you're healed from your trauma, because nobody is ever fully healed. And what I guess I mean when I say healed is there's no part of me that's afraid of all of those things that I've worked on coming back up. I'm a different person. I have a different identity. I show up differently. I speak differently. I think differently. I feel differently. That to me is healed. It doesn't mean there's no more trauma. It doesn't mean that shit's not going to happen in life. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to react, maybe be a bitch sometimes if something's pissed me off. It doesn't mean that I'm a perfect human. It means that you're no longer trapped in the old version of you, in the old identity of who you believe that you had to be in order to survive. And so for me, healing has to be more than just one pillar, more than just one quick fix, more than just one thing. These nervous system resets, let's talk about this first, because nervous system is such a hot topic if we're talking about new techniques in 2026. Nervous system regulation is not new. There are so many books going back so many years that teach nervous system regulation, that teach the window of tolerance, that teach dorsal vagal activation, sympathetic activation. They teach you the different states of your nervous system. This information isn't new. It's just becoming really popular at the moment. There's always a flavor of the month. And at the moment, that is nervous system regulation. And what people aren't understanding with nervous system regulation is that regulating your nervous system is only one part of the equation. As I said before, You could regulate your nervous system every single day. And yes, your window of tolerance, which is your ability to handle the stresses of everyday life, would increase. But, and your capacity to handle stresses of everyday life would absolutely increase. But you're still the same person who got that dysregulated in the first place. What we're not addressing right now in 2026 yet is the fact of why did everyone's nervous systems get so fucking cooked in the first place? Like, why do we have like almost an epidemic of people that are like, I need to regulate my nervous system? Why is everyone relating to that? Why does everybody feel like they need that right now? Well, I mean, there's a number of different reasons. We can be looking at people who, at people who have trauma is an obvious one, but also like the way that we're living is not really conducive to our biology. There's so many reasons, but for me, it comes back to the fact that we have things that we haven't processed that are unconsciously running in the background. And I see this with clients all the time. We have all of this trauma running in the background, causing us to be triggered by so many different things, sending us into fight or flight. And we're functioning from this fight or flight state until we get to the point of burnout and the nervous system is absolutely cooked, broken down. Nervous system regulation will help you to build that strength back up, but it's not helping the reason why you got there in the first place. Why so dysregulated? Why the nervous system chaos? Why the nervous system shut down? How did it learn that? How did it learn to do that? To go into fight or flight and then to switch off into dissociation? Like, that's a trauma pattern. And what's your triggers? What triggers your nervous system? What puts you into fight or flight? All of these things need to be addressed if we don't want to just end up in the same position again, because we can regulate, but we're still living through this perception of this is how the world is. And if you believe because of past experiences that the world is an unsafe place and that you're unsafe, nothing's safe, nowhere's safe, it's only going to take a minute for you to leave the house, for you to get caught in traffic, to get an email from your boss, a fight with your partner, to trigger you back into I'm not safe, nothing's safe, back into fight or flight again, and back into dysregulation. You can keep regulating, yes, and unconsciously teach yourself that some of these situations are safe. But when it comes to trauma, which is a memory or a moment that is open and unprocessed, you're not going to be able to override that. You actually have to process that memory. You actually have to go back into that in order to close it off and complete it. I can see a few comments coming in, so I'm just going to like have a scroll back and a read. Yeah, financially, absolutely. It's quite a process to go through. Someone has mentioned like it's financially quite a process to see all of these different therapists and to try and complete that process yourself, which again is why we have such impactful results with Aruka and why people are so excited when they find it, because it really is all of those different pillars of healing. It's processing the memories visually, energetically, subconsciously, within your mind, within your body, somatic, like it's pulling it all in together with an understanding that all of that is also energy, and it's happening all at an energetic level as well. So it really does make a difference. It's one of those things that I could say to you a million times, just try it. And it's not until you try it that you're going to come back to me and say, holy shit, I wish I had have tried this sooner. So we also act differently with different people. That's common. Doesn't rely on self and the other person. Yes. Okay. So coming back to the nervous system and nervous system regulation, it's a part of the puzzle. And, when we're doing an Aruka therapy session, when I have a client and we are working with their traumas, so we're going back into the traumas, we're visually processing it, we're processing it through the subconscious, we're like correctly closing off, releasing the emotion, doing what the brain needs to do to know that this is over. Between these memories that can be quite intense and can be quite activating to the nervous system, we're also regulating the nervous system within the session. to help the brain to know that that was safe and the body to become part of that experience, to know that I accessed that memory and now I'm feeling really safe and regulated. So we're pairing the safe and regulated state with the memory, which is essentially what EMDR is, like bilateral stimulation, regulating the nervous system, pulling you back into your window of tolerance, and recalling the memory is like pairing it with a feeling of safety and regulation. We do that within Aruka, but in a different way. We process the memory, and between the memories, we're regulating the nervous system so that you're not leaving in an activated state thinking this healing shit is like is so intense and so hard and so scary. Your body can start to learn that it's safe, and it can also start to learn that those memories are safe as well. So again, nervous system, taking it into account is important, because there are therapies where you go and you bring up all of this trauma and there's no regulation and you leave feeling absolutely awful. You leave feeling sick, you leave feeling dissociated because you can't cope with what you've just brought up. It's important that we're also regulating the nervous system as part of it, but doing this as its own thing, that's not healing. That's not going to be enough for somebody who's got past trauma. If you've just got a bit of a stressful life, absolutely nervous system regulation is so powerful. Anybody with past trauma, and let's be honest, I don't really know anybody who doesn't have some unprocessed past traumas. And for that as well, like the way that I would describe a trauma is something from the past that still has a hold on the present moment. So any moments or memories that feel open, any moments or memories where you can still remember how you felt, or they come up often, you're constantly thinking about them, they're constantly being triggered in arguments with partners, or anything that it's like an open wound that continues to come back up to the surface. And then there are traumas that we don't remember. And then there's trauma that we've completely repressed, which is a whole other subject that I talk into quite often and will continue to talk into. But we all have these moments, whether it be a really intense trauma like abuse, or, some of the more intense things that I speak about, whether it be something like that, or whether it be simpler things like, there's a lot of like Gabor Mate, and there's a lot of people that talk about trauma being what you didn't get. So moments where something happened and no one was there for you, and being alone with those emotions. Loneliness really is like a common thread through a lot of trauma as well. But whether it's a moment where you got into trouble, a parent yelled at you, whether it was some kids at school that said, you can't play with us today, those moments have such an impact on the trajectory of our lives, but also on the way that we feel and how safe we're going to feel in social situations. If our friends have said to us, we don't want to play with you, we don't like you, you're whatever, in social situations, this person often ends up with social anxiety, or they end up trying too hard and being too overbearing for people, that people like, oh, I don't really like being around them because they're trying so hard to be liked. And it's constantly showing up in our unconscious actions. And the crazy thing about the unconscious, and especially our subconscious beliefs, is that we are oblivious to them a lot of the time. Like, I do this for a job. I speak about this, read about this, learn about this, take clients through this every single day. And there are still beliefs at least once a month that will become, apparent that they are still there, and that I was very blind to them. And this is why people call them shadows, because you can't see them. And shadows, your shadow parts are a collection of unconscious beliefs that you have about who you are or who you can't be. And so a lot of the time, the things that we project onto other people, or the things that we think we can't be, we're unconsciously doing that. We're showing up as that. We're being that person anyway, and we don't even realize it. So some people might say, you're acting just like your mother, or you're acting just like your father. And no, I'm so offended. I'm nothing like them. But unconsciously, in their actions that they're recreating every day, they actually are doing things that are very similar to that person, but they can't see it because they're in their unconscious. They're operating from the subconscious mind. And so we actually have to go behind. We actually have to go behind the programs. We actually have to go behind in order to access sometimes what those traumas are, what those moments are that are causing us to act in a certain way, and to actually see that we are acting in that way. So this is where, again, therapy in 2026 needs to be in the subconscious, because you can have a talk therapy session with somebody, or you can have a session with somebody, even somatically, where, they're having these realizations, but unless something is being changed in the subconscious mind at that deeper level, nothing changes. No pathways change, no beliefs change, nothing shifts. So we need to be doing the somatic work within the subconscious. We need to be doing the energetic work within the subconscious. We need to be doing the mindset work whilst in the subconscious. We need to be behind the programs so that we can actually start to shift the programs. So I'm just going to check these notes again. Just going to read out ones that are relevant to what we're talking about. Yeah, so someone said, yeah, this is so true. I feel as I'm healing, I need different modalities, and had to keep seeking something new, because what's happening is like you're progressing beyond, you might have released all of your emotions. And I know there was a period where I did so much breath work because I was disconnected from my body. And people would say, feel your emotions. And I was like, how? I haven't cried in 10 years, which is wild, but actually true. I hadn't cried in 10 years. I didn't know how to connect with my body. I didn't know how to release emotions. And so somatics and learning to communicate with my body and be in my body and release emotions was an essential part of the healing process. But I was already years deep into my therapy before I even discovered that was a necessity. And I only discovered it because I realized how blocked I was and how much I was just in my head. I'm like, what's that belief? What's that memory? Where's that from? It was all in my head and there was nothing happening in my body. And I was still waking up anxious. I was still waking up in panic. I was still had all of this happening in my body because I hadn't addressed that element. And this was what was like the final penny drop for me, was like, we need to be doing this in one session where we're processing the memory. Yes. We're regulating the nervous system to pair the regulated state with the memory. Yes. But what are the subconscious beliefs that we created about ourselves in that moment? Because I might be able to process that memory, but I'm still the person who believes that she is worthless or disgusting or ugly or unlovable or whatever it is. I still hold that subconscious belief until I remove it. I still hold that subconscious belief even if I visually process that memory. So then I have to go and find someone who works with beliefs, and then they're going to find the same memories, and we're like, I already worked on this. And then we're going to be shifting it from a belief level, but then we could do all of that completely disconnected from our body. We could do all of that and still not connect the emotions of what it felt like to be in that moment, and still hold those emotions within our energetic body and within our physical body. We would still hold those emotions. This is why it's so important to do therapy that pulls it all together, where you're processing the memory whilst going, hold on, in that memory, what was the subconscious belief that I created? Let's shift those from the brain, but also energetically. Those words have energy, they have frequency, they're made up of energy. Let's shift that using energy work. Let's shift those beliefs, remove them from the subconscious mind. What after we've processed the memory, or as part of processing the memory, and what's the emotions and what does the body feel and how does the body want to move and how do we get the body involved in that? Oh, I just can't even. Like that all together is just magic. And it's just magic. I've got like goosebumps thinking about it. It's magic. And it's one of those things that until you experience it, you just can't even imagine what that feels like to have something so complete. And this is why I say to people, you only bring each traumatic memory once because we work on it correctly. And it's really true. I always say to people, if you're worried about trying it, just bring one memory, just bring one thing that you're wanting to work on. It doesn't even have to be the biggest thing, but just bring one thing so that you can experience the shift for yourself, because it really is a felt experience. So I'm just going to read these. Okay. A child should not be in a position to need shadow work. I'm not sure what the question is here. A child should not be in a position to need shadow work. No, I don't think. My opinion and perspective personally on shadow work is that shadow work is an advanced level of healing. I think that anybody who has a lot of trauma, shadow work is not for somebody at the beginning of their healing journey, and it's not for somebody who has a lot of trauma. You need a high level of self-awareness, a high level of self-worth and accountability, and the ability to actually hold seeing your shadows and becoming aware of those unconscious parts of yourself. You need to have done a level of work to get to that point. If somebody is feeling worthless and helpless and hopeless, and they have all of these past traumas that are constantly being activated, they're triggered all the time, and they get into shadow work, it's a recipe for disaster. I've seen people that have they've worked with shadow work people who have said, like, you've got this shadow, you've got that shadow. They beat themselves up more. It pulls them down more. It is absolutely like a elevated, like a later stage of the healing journey, in my opinion. In my program, Triggered to Thriving, I talk about this and I teach shadow work very much like later on down the track. I've never done shadow work with children. I wouldn't say that I personally wouldn't do shadow work with children. For children, it's all about the subconscious beliefs that they're creating about who they are, and implanting really positive subconscious beliefs by repetition of words, by getting them to feel that those words are true. We can do a whole episode on kids and working with kids. But no, to that person's question, absolutely, I wouldn't do shadow work on children. So, yeah, someone just said, wow, I'm hearing you. Definitely in my head, not my body. And I actually have a story about that. The reason that I started body work was that I was, I don't know, like 8 years probably, I think it was, into my healing journey. And I was like, I've processed all my memories. I'm not having flashbacks. I wasn't having nightmares. I was like, I've got pretty good beliefs about myself. Why am I still waking up anxious? Why am I still panicking? Why am I still feeling not right? Like, why do I still feel all of these feelings in my body? And I hadn't connected in with my body. And at the time, I was speaking to this helpline. It was a helpline for complex trauma. And this lady said to me, she's like, you're very intelligent. You said you work in the industry, but you're all in your head. Like, you're thinking, and you know what your beliefs are, you know what your traumas are, you know everything, you're intellectualizing everything. But have you actually ever stopped to feel the weight and the heaviness of what's happened, of all of this? Like, have you ever actually been in your body and felt? And I instantly knew that it was where the work needed to go, because I just went, oh, no, I haven't. And I do not want to do that. And this is what I've discovered after this journey of like doing this and then working with more clients, is that so many people, that's the biggest fear. It's not so much revisiting the memory. It's not so much the actual work. It's the feeling. We're afraid of the feeling. We're afraid of what it's going to feel like to have to feel that panic again, to feel that shock, to feel the fear, to feel the grief, to feel the hurt. Like, we're afraid of the feeling. And so once I started to learn more about feelings and somatics and being in my body and understanding that those feelings were just energy, and that they were energy in motion, emotions, energy in motion. And once I started to really just think about my feelings as if they wanted to be felt instead of being afraid of them, it was such a profound shift. It was like, okay, instead of being afraid of the fear, I'm going to welcome the fear in, and I'm going to like sit with it and feel it. And how does my body want to move? And I want to shake when I feel that fear. So I'm going to shake. And what do I want to say? And I want to say, I'm scared. I'm fucking scared. And this is where tapping is really powerful, because, tapping on points it does a lot for your brain. It's great for distraction. It's great for like your meridians. They talk about like the tapping points. It's good for moving energy. But what's the most profound thing that I found about tapping, and what I found is really moving the needle, is that we're saying it out loud, because words spoken are released. I do all work with my clients out loud, because there were so many modalities that I learned where we did it inside our minds. We would have conversations with that inner child, and I'd be like, imagine you're saying this, imagine you're saying that. When I shifted to working out loud and speaking out loud, the shifts were just 10x. Like it was so profound because those words, asking your body how it wants to move, what it wants to do, what it wants to say, how it wants to release is a whole other part part of the healing journey. It's beyond mind. It's beyond it's your body, it's your somatics, it's this release. And so this lady had said to me, "Have you felt?" And I was like, "I don't want to feel. I do not want to do that. That is, ugh, I'm not interested." And but I knew that that was where the work needed to go, and it really was that missing piece. And so I started to make sure that when I was working with clients, that I was incorporating that into my practice, that I was making sure that when we were processing these really traumatic memories, were we stopping to actually come back into the body and to feel? Were we actually stopping to go, hold on, this really traumatic thing's happening, and yes, we're visually processing it and we know what the beliefs are that we need to remove. But how do you feel right now? How does that little girl feel? How does that little boy feel? What did it feel like to be in that moment? And we're actually allowing that little version of ourselves to feel, and ourselves to feel, to release that emotion. Because every coping strategy that we have, every addiction that we have, our scrolling, our drugs, our wine, our chocolate, our binge eating, our whatever your vice is a distraction from our feelings. It's a distraction from having to feel our feelings because we're so uncomfortable with it. And this is why it's literally where I start in Triggered to Thriving. It's like, this is where you start. You start by learning how to not be afraid of your emotions, how to regulate the nervous system to be able to hold the rest of what's to come. And then you go into the inner child and the subconscious beliefs and the traumas in the past, and you start uncovering things with this solid foundation. And this is why, the meditations and everything that I provide throughout Triggered to Thriving are structured in that way of, you're regulating first, and then you're uncovering, and then you're tapping into your body, you're releasing the emotions, you're learning how to sit with those feelings and emotions, to not be afraid of them, so that when we get into those later levels, it's actually, you can hold it. You can hold what's coming up. Okay, thank you. Great listen. I see what is missing. I'm so glad. That's my whole point of doing this live, is that you can ask questions and that I can kind of tailor it, but also so that you can see what is missing, because it took me a lot of years to uncover this. Like, it was a good 10 years before I had the penny drop of, oh, in order to heal, it needs to be this, 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 and this. And I want to give that to people. I want people to have those penny drop moments so much sooner, so that you can actually start to properly heal. Oh, like actually healing for good, so that you can get on with life. Because we don't heal trauma so that we can heal trauma forever. We don't heal trauma so that we can, continuously be on this healing journey where we're dredging things up. We heal trauma so that we can get back to being alive. Trauma keeps you in survival, which keeps you locked into the past. We want to be able to come into the present moment and fully experience life. That's why we heal, so that we can be in it. We can be alive. We can feel. Because when you numb the dark, you numb the light. And numbing all of those emotions meant that I couldn't feel as much love, as much freedom, as much power, as much excitement, as much joy. Because when you start to feel okay with holding the bad, you feel okay with holding the good, and you allow emotions back in. Yes, just a Band-Aid is what's happening. Mel, this is where I'm at, being called to get back into my body. Absolutely. And it's being called back into your body, but allowing your body to also communicate with you what's happening in the mind and what the moments are that haven't maybe been processed, that are still stuck in the body, or what the emotions are that are still there. So yeah, someone has written here, in order to get back in your body, you need to visualize seeing yourself going into your body. So yeah, this is one of the processes that we do, is pulling the soul, pulling the consciousness back into the body, grounding into the body, but also feeling anchored into the present moment, grounding into the room, into where you are in space and time. And yeah, so we absolutely do that as part of Haruka therapy as well. If we see someone's dissociated, we see they're disconnected from their emotions, that's where we adapt our approach. All of my therapists are taught to adapt their approach to where the person's at. If they're dissociated, they can't feel, they can't connect with their body. The approach is different to somebody who is fully connected to their body, fully connected to their emotions, and potentially overly emotional and constantly feeling emotional. That's a different approach. That's a different situation. That's a different set of tools that we're using. But we're always coming back to these 4 pillars where it's working across the mind, it's working across the body and somatics, it's working across the energetics and the memory processing. So, what do you recommend for scary, intrusive thoughts? Oh, I'm going to do a whole episode on intrusive thoughts. I'm not going to answer it today because I'm trying to stick to subject. I could talk on here literally all day. But I absolutely will do this. Whether I do it, I might do it even tomorrow, or I'll definitely do it on next Wednesday's live. But absolutely can speak to scary, intrusive thoughts and personal experience with that. And yeah, there's a lot of advice in the chat. Some of it, some of it good, some of it, take it with a grain of salt. Everyone's perspective and opinions on what's what is coming from our own subconscious. So even when I speak, what I'm speaking is just coming from my personal experience and my experience working with thousands of clients. It's the patterns I've seen, it's the things that I've picked up on, it's my understanding. But we're always having new understandings, deeper understandings. I was nothing more than to feel, want nothing more than to feel the love and to love life again. And that was my drive, was to feel alive, because I always felt dead inside, disconnected, dissociated. So being able to actually feel alive, like fully alive and in life, was the ultimate goal. And yeah, if you haven't already tried Aruka, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you give it a try. Yeah, so back to, I guess, healing in 2026. I think the point that I really wanted everyone to get today is that understanding that there are so many tools. There are so many techniques. There are so many perspectives. There are so many opinions. There are so many different ways that we can heal. But we need to be working across these 4 pillars simultaneously. So memory isn't just stored in the brain. Memory is stored in the brain stem. Like, it's not just stored visually, it's stored in multiple parts of your brain. It's also stored in your implicit unconscious reactions. It's stored in implicit memory, which is the way that your body moves and reacts to things without your mind even knowing. So we can have the visual memories, we can have the implicit memories where our body reacts. We can have shock stored in our brainstem that gets sent through our nervous system and our body without us even understanding why. Memory of past events can be stored in the brainstem. It can be stored in the body. It can be stored in visual memories. It can be stored in words. It can be stored in unconscious beliefs that we have about ourselves. And if you're working with somebody who knows how to process the memory at a visual level, at an energetic level, at a body level, at an implicit level, at a somatic level, energetically bringing all of that together, the healing is so much more profound, rapid, and just honestly, like I say, I speak about Aruka and I created Aruka because it was what I wish had have existed when I first started healing. I can only imagine where I would be now if Aruka therapy existed and I knew about it and I knew everything that I knew now 15 years ago. Like, whoa. But this was my journey to uncover, to deep dive, to obsessively study, to figure all of this out, to test it on myself, to test it on friends, to then working it in with clients, to then creating a modality that now I teach and train, and my therapists get just as powerful results as I get. It's an incredible feeling. And so the point here today was, I guess, just understanding that healing needs to happen at these levels, whether you're somebody who's trying to heal yourself or whether you are a therapist who's working with people and thinking they're getting better, but they're like, we're stuck at the same spot. We're always getting stuck at this same memory or this same part of the healing journey. This is why it is this connection, it's this understanding of all of the different areas in which memory is stored, and also the ways in which trauma affects our identity, and the fact that we actually do need to recreate essentially a new identity, because who you had to become in order to survive is a different person that you're going to be when you start thriving. Like, you can't be the person who was programmed to survive and be thriving. They are really two different people. And people talk about ego deaths and identity upgrades, and they're like great labels for it, but essentially at a core level, it's just like, if you believe that nothing is safe and no one's safe and you're not safe and connections aren't safe because of the traumas that happened in your past, then there needs to be a level of identity shifting to believe that you are safe in the present moment and that you're powerful. There's so many people that process all of these past traumatic memories, and the memory is processed, but there's still this feeling of powerlessness that stays stuck within them. And they still believe at a subconscious level, I am powerless. And so they still don't stand up for themselves or take the job or, put themselves forward for anything. They still believe that life is happening to them. They need to reprogram that subconscious belief that they are powerless into I am powerful before they can actually start to see, believe, act, think, feel that they're powerful and therefore create a new reality. They need to have a new identity, and that comes from the deeper subconscious work. So this is the message. Like, it's got to be all levels, and this is why we don't process any memories without regulating the nervous system, without involving the body, without releasing the emotions, and without uncovering what the subconscious beliefs are that the person created that is keeping them currently in that past moment. So thank you so much for everyone today who has been listening live, everybody who's been writing in. I appreciate your questions. I appreciate your participation. I hope that you've got something from this. And if you've got nothing else from this, I think the only thing that I can say to you is to try, is to just try it. If you have been trying other modalities and they've not been working, if you feel like there's something that's been missing, try Aruka therapy. It really is something else. And I spoke about this on my stories the other day. It's taken me a lot of time to say that it is something else. It felt very connected to my identity, but honestly, it feels like it's come through me, and it's just now I'm its biggest advocate. Like, try Aruka therapy with one of the therapists in the clinic, online. There's people all over the world doing it now. Like, just try it is all I can say to you. Thank you again, everybody, for listening. And I'm going to end it there.